Although started as music streaming software company, over the last years Volumio has released streaming hardware too. The Motivo on review here is the latest edition. With its large touchscreen it's rather unique, but how does it sound? The Motivo takes its name from the way it was conceived. The Italian motivo stands for the reason or motivation to come to an end product. Volumio has used its community to come to this product, and we'll see this back in the result. The most remarkable feature is the high quality touchscreen that takes up a large part of the top of the player. But before we go into that, let's first see where the Motivo fits into a stereo. Since it's a streamer, it needs to be connected to your network over either a network cable or Wi-Fi. That way it can connect to internet radio, streaming services and metadata. Music from your computer or NAS can be played too. There are several ways to use the Motivo. For instance, connected to an amplifier over either XLR or RCA cables. A pair of speakers are also needed, of course. You can fully control the Motivo using its touchscreen, but remote control is also possible using the free Volumio app on a tablet or smartphone. It is also possible to control it from a browser by typing motivo.local in the address line. Alternatively, you can connect an external DAC over SPDIF, Toslink or I2S on HDMI. The DAC is then connected to the amplifier over RCA or XLR cables. If you have an amplifier or receiver with built-in DAC, that can be used too. Using a power amplifier connected directly to the Motivo over either XLR or RCA is yet another possibility. The volume control is then done on the Motivo. You can alternatively use active speakers connected to the analog or digital outputs of the Motivo. Depending on the speakers, the volume control can be done on the Motivo or on the speakers. Headphone listeners can connect their cans directly to the Motivo. There are separate outputs for high impedance and low impedance headphones. These should not be used simultaneously though. The Motivo has an unconventional shape for a streamer, as you can see from the side and the top. This angle gives the best impression. It measures 196 by 205 by 60 mm and weighs 1.2 kilos. The only control is the red rotary encoder that by pressing takes care of power and standby and by turning controls the volume. Everything else is controlled by software, controlled from the touchscreen or remotely on a smartphone, tablet or browser. On the back we see a 9V DC input that, according to the text, requires 4 amps. A switch mode power supply comes in the box. Next to it the network connector and 2 USB-A sockets. Then the digital outputs, I2S on HDMI, SPDIF and Toslink. One of the USBs can also connect to a DAC. The balanced analog outputs are remarkable since they are on female connectors with in the center 6.3mm headphone jacks. One for low impedance headphones and one for high impedance ones. The female XLR parts of the connector are for 4V balanced analog outputs. I suppose this is done due to space constraints. XLR outputs should be on female XLRs, but these are not available with 6.3mm jacks inside. A pair of short gender inverting XLR cables come in the box. Last but not least, a pair of RCAs offer the 2V single-ended analog outputs. Once inside you see a small board that holds the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth antennas. Let's move to the main board where the DC power enters. Here we see some filtering to clean up the 9V DC voltage coming from the switch mode power supply. Directly behind the Ethernet and USB entries we see the dedicated electronics. First a transformer package for galvanic separation with next to it the SMSC interface chip. It sends a signal to the Raspberry Pi Compute Model 4 that is mounted piggyback on the main board. This is of course where the Volumio software runs, the video is generated and the Wi-Fi and Bluetooth radios are. The I2S output goes to the reclocking section based on an Amtel ARM processor and a Xilinx programmable logic chip. The system control is based on a Raspberry Pi 2-core microprocessor. Next, a linear power supply that brings down the 9V DC to 6V DC for the audio electronics. The voltage is again regulated nearby each audio circuit. The digital to analog conversion is done here by the ESS ES9038Q2M chip that has its clock crystal very nearby. The analog outputs are then sent to a pair of 33078 op amps to be sent to the output buffers, again done with 33078s. The headphone amplifier is the well-known Texas Instruments TPA6120 A2 Class AB amp connected to the DAC's balanced output. Remain the digital outputs. The Spitter and Toslink outputs are taken care of by the Wolfson WM8804 transceiver chip, connected directly to the I2S output on the Raspberry Pi module and galvanically isolated by a Murata high bandwidth transformer. The I2S output is also galvanically isolated. Remarkable here is that the protocol and pinout of the HDMI connector can easily be changed in the Volumio software by selecting the DAC connected to it. Volumio proudly mentions that during the conception and design of the Motivo they used the input of a 500-person forum. That probably has led to the involvement of Amanero Technologies in developing the digital circuits. Next to the gigabit network, it also offers Wi-Fi 802.11a, b, g, n and AC in both 2.4 and 5 GHz. Bluetooth version 5 and AirPlay are present too. The DAC and the I2S work up to 384 kHz 24-bit and DSD 256. Over USB it can output PCM 768 kHz 32-bit. The Spitter and Toslink are limited to 192 kHz. Shortly pressing the red button switches on the Motivo, which does take some time. Pressing it again will enter standby mode. From standby mode, pressing it again will instantly start it up while keeping it pressed over 5 seconds entirely switches off the Motivo. You can enter the address of a shared volume holding music, access a DLA server or, once certified, use it as Roon endpoint. It can also function as a DLA renderer, for instance for sending music from the Tidal app to the Motivo. You can control the Motivo using the touchscreen, but also using the free Volumio app on a smartphone or tablet, or from a browser on computer, tablet or smartphone. See my review, the 2023 Volumio Primo network player and bridge, for more on the software. I started off in my reference setup 2A, where the Motivo was connected to the ACAM Radia A25 amplifier over Siltec London RCA cables to the analog inputs. It drives the Acoustic Energy Radiance 1 loudspeakers connected over Kimber 4PR loudspeaker cable and placed on 80s target stands with stack audio over 50 isolators. They are supported by the REL T5 subwoofer that is connected to the loudspeaker terminals on the ACAM using the cable that came with the sub. The network switch is the Uptone Audio Ether Regen with Uptone Audio Ultra Caps 1.2 power supply. A Synology DS119J NAS with 8TB storage had Minim server running. Roon server was running on the Roon Noculus 1. The equipment was housed in the 80s target rack. I was immediately impressed by the Motivo. Really impressed. Such a compact device with a noisy display aboard that sounds this good. The stereo image was amongst the best I've heard in this setup. Lows go deep, although there was a slight emphasis on the mid-lows. but strangely enough that didn't stand in the way of a rather open stereo image. I found the minimum phase slow roll-off filter the most musical of the 6. It might be clear that I had to try the Motivo in my setup 1B. In my reference setup 1B, the Motivo was first connected to the Air AX520 amplifier over Grim Audio SQM cable. It drove the PMC FAC12 signature loudspeakers on Stack Audio OVA isolators and connected over AudioQuest Robinhood Zero loudspeaker cable. The network connection comes from the Zixel GS1900-10HP switch. It was connected to the Motivo over the Network Acoustics ENO system. From there a Cat6 cable made the connection to the router. The Synology DS119J NAS with 8TB storage had minimum server running. Roon server was running on the Roon Oculus One. The equipment was placed in a Creative Trend 3-3 rack. The direct impression was identical to that in setup 2A, but here even more detail was offered. And against a, for this price class, unusual deep black background. There also was more spaciousness while maintaining focus. Sibilance was very well controlled too. I've heard worse with more expensive streamers. I wonder what would happen if I would use a more expensive power supply to replace the switching mode power brick that came with the Motivo. So I connected the Ferrum Hipsys power supply, set it to 9 volts and connected it. Believe it or not, but that decreased the sound quality, most noticeable on sibilance. The Hipsys showed a 0.9 amp current, considerably less than the 4 amps mentioned on the back of the Motivo. This means that I could also try the S-Booster BOTW PMP Eco MK2 9 volts power supply. Again, a slight loss in sound quality, but slightly better than the Hipsys. Both power supplies usually give sound improvement, but not here. Just use the power brick that came with the Motivo. In that configuration I rate the Motivo in the lower quart of setup 1B. But how does it function as a transport? Again in setup 1B, the Holo Audio Cyan 2 DAC replaced the internal DAC of the Motivo. The I2S connection between the two was over a short 4K HDMI cable. The Cyan 2 was connected to the amp over Grim Audio SQM cable. As a transport, so digital out over I2S, it equals the Magna Mano Ultra MK3 Farad streamer that normally functions here. Quite a feat. The Volumio Motivo is a very elegant streamer which has already won prizes for its design. You can easily hide the other equipment and only have the Motivo and the speakers inside. Often such elegant design doesn't go together with very good sound quality. But that's not the case here. A lot of experience from the project forum might be the basis for this. The match of hardware and software is also very good. I did not have any problems despite the fact that it's only recently introduced. Okay, Roon did not certify the Motivo yet, but that goes for many other products and will be solved in the future. In any case, this is a lovely product that sounds great at the same time. It's absolutely worth every cent of the €1,749 it cost. And on that bombshell we come to the end of this video. Next week at 5 PM Central European Time there will be a new video again. If you don't want to miss that, subscribe to this channel or follow me on Patreon, Facebook, LinkedIn or Instagram, so you will be informed when new videos are out. Help me reach even more people by giving this video a thumb up or a link to it on the social media. It is much appreciated. Many thanks to those viewers that support this channel financially. It keeps me independent and lets me improve the channel further. If that makes you feel like supporting my work too, the links are in the comments below this video on YouTube. I'm Hans Beekhuizen, thank you for watching and see you next week. And whatever you do, enjoy the music.